Hello and welcome back to the channel. We're back with another video. I've got a monster day planned outside tomorrow, so I thought today I'm going to stay inside and I'm going to film a video all about the gear that I wear for winter hiking. We've had some really cold days here recently in the Peak District, so I thought now is the perfect time to film a video about all the different gear, all the layers that I wear for hiking in the winter, especially in the Peak District, Lake District, Snowdonia. I also work in an outdoors shop, so this is the kind of stuff that I'd be talking to customers about when they come in for winter gear. Hopefully this will be helpful if you're kind of new to hiking, you're wanting to get into a bit of winter hiking, especially for UK hiking, because we get a wide range of weather in winter in the UK. Anyway, let's get into it. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to go through all the different layers, so base layers, mid layers, outer layers, and I'm going to show you the different options that I have depending on what the weather's like. And the first layer we're going to start with is base layers. So the main purpose of a base layer is moisture management and keeping your body temperature regulated. And for me, I use two different types of base layers. You've got your synthetic base layer, so it's a man-made material, such as this Helly Hansen base layer here. It's kind of like a medium weight one. So the main benefits of a synthetic base layer is it wicks moisture away from the body extremely well. It's really quick drying, so when it's really cold, you know, you haven't got sweat drying on your body, which is then going to make you very cold. They're really nice and lightweight. They're excellent if you're doing high intensity walking or even running, and they are relatively warm. They're not going to be as warm as merino wool, which is the other type of base layer that I use, but I'd say for about 75% of the hiking that I do in the UK in the winter, I'm going to be wearing a synthetic base layer, just because I get a little bit too warm wearing a merino one. And this is what a merino base layer looks like. I got this one in New Zealand, which is where the UK imports a lot of its merino from, and this one is an icebreaker one, really good brand, and it's their 200 weight, which is around a medium weight. Benefits of merino: it does wick moisture away from the body relatively well. It is very warm, so it's going to be warmer than your synthetic base layers. Another really nice thing about a merino base layer is they are very odor resistant. You can wear these things for 3 to 4 days and they're not going to stink, and it's to do with the kind of fibers in there. They handle kind of bacteria very well. When I bought this, the guy told me at the shop that he's worn it for like a week at a time and never washed it. Each their own on that one. A couple of negatives to them: they're extremely expensive. So I think something like this now is going to cost you around 75, pushing up towards, you know, 90, 100 pounds, depending on which weight you go for. And if you do wash them a bit too much, they do start to thin out a little bit, and yeah, they just kind of lose their quality. Saying that, I've had this one for about 6 to 7 years. I've worn it loads and I've washed it loads, and it's still going very strong. And one last thing, some people just find them very itchy. I found it itchy for the first couple of times. After a few washes, that itchy sensation seemed to disappear. So yeah, I'd be wearing my merino base layer when it's really cold outside. So that's basically it for base layers. I will go on to legs after I've done upper body, but we'll go on to our upper body mid layer next. The whole purpose of a mid layer is there to keep you warm. It's there to insulate you, and they can range from a thin fleece all the way up to an insulated down jacket. So if I've got one of my base layers on and the weather wasn't, you know, really cold, I'd firstly go for just a very thin sort of synthetic fleece. This is a Innovate one. It's made for running, but I wear it for hiking as well. And it's just got a very, very thin layer of kind of insulated fleece in there, and yeah, it works absolutely brilliantly on top of a base layer just to take the chill off. If it was to be a bit colder, you could go for a thicker fleece like this one. This is a Patagonia one, and it's just a thicker material, and you can go even thicker and thicker when it comes to fleeces. If we're looking at sort of 5 to 10 degrees in winter, something like this on top of a base layer when you're going uphill is going to be relatively warm. So those thin fleeces are brilliant for just taking the chill off. If it's going to be very cold, then you're going to be looking at an insulated jacket as your mid layer. So I'll firstly start with a synthetic insulated jacket. This is a Patagonia Nano Air, I believe. It's man-made insulation inside here, and when I'm working in the shop, I spend a lot of my time in the winter going through the kind of the benefits of synthetic insulation to down insulation, and it all depends on, you know, the type of walking you're doing, where you're doing it, and the temperatures that it's going to be. So the benefits of synthetic insulation: it is relatively warm for insulation. They've come a long way in developing the kind of the warmth of synthetic insulation. One of the main benefits for synthetic insulation is how well it handles moisture. If synthetic insulation gets wet, it still carries on keeping you warm. So if you get really hot and sweaty and you get to the top of the hill, the insulation, if it has got a bit damp and wet, or if it's got damp from rain, it is still going to keep you warm, and it will also dry very quickly, which is a massive benefit really, because the down insulation doesn't work like that. And since I bought this jacket, I've worn this so much more than my down jacket. purely because in the UK, especially in recent winters, we haven't really had very cold weather. So when you're powering it up a hill, you know, you're really going for it, synthetic insulation for me works amazingly because I can still keep it on, I can unzip it if I get a bit hot, but I'm not going to get too hot. When I'm wearing my down jacket, this thing has to be ripped off within a couple of minutes of going uphill during most of the UK winter weather that we get. If it is extremely cold, then this probably isn't going to cut it, especially when you get to the top or if you stop for like a brew break. But for most of my winter hiking, I like to hike quite fast. I get very hot. This thing works perfectly for that. One of the negatives is it doesn't pack down as small as down does, so it can be quite bulky in the bag. This one's a very lightweight one, so it still does pack down relatively small, and synthetic insulation is a cheaper insulation compared to down feathers. And lastly, if you don't want to use animal products, because down feathers obviously come from an animal, the insulation in this is man-made, doesn't necessarily make it more environmentally friendly, but we're not going to go into that today. So I did briefly talk about it then, but this is the other insulated jacket I have that I use a lot in the winter, and this is the Rab Prozar. Rab make heaps of down jackets. If you go out on a walk in the Peak District, you're going to see someone wearing a Rab down jacket. They're really well made, really good quality. And this one in particular is very warm. A fill power of the feather in this is 800 or 900, which is a very high quality feather. Fill power isn't the amount of feathers in the jacket, it's the quality of the feather and how well it keeps you warm. And like I was saying before, down insulation is extremely warm. The weight to warmth ratio is far higher than a synthetic jacket. They're very lightweight. They pack down to absolutely nothing. I usually have like a little dry bag and I can roll it up, stuff it down there, compress the air out and it'll go down to a little ball. Basically, my down jacket now comes out of me on the really cold days, middle of the winter. You know, we're talking 0 degrees and below. And obviously you can go for thicker down jackets than this for when it's really cold, especially if you're wild camping and that sort of thing. A really thick, heavy down jacket is absolutely perfect for that sort of thing. And like I was saying before when I was talking about the synthetic insulation, down insulation doesn't handle water well at all. Once it gets wet, it stays wet and then it stops keeping you warm. And the thing to remember with most down insulated jackets is they are not waterproof. So if they do get any water on them, the rain gets through onto those feathers relatively quickly. The nice thing about most of Rab's jackets though, you will usually be able to see it on the side panel. It says Nick Wax Hydrophobic Down. And that basically means they have put a hydrophobic coating onto the feathers, which helps the jacket handle moisture a lot better than just a normal down feather. It only works to a certain extent, just from personal experience. And lastly, down jackets, they're really expensive, especially in more recent times. I've worked in the outdoors industry now for nearly 2 years, and the amount that these jackets have gone up is absolutely ridiculous. They cost an absolute fortune now, so wait for those winter sales because they will happen and they always get knocked down to the sort of price that they should be. So yeah, that is mid layers pretty much covered. One thing I haven't mentioned, and this applies to mid layers and base layers, is try and avoid cotton wherever you can. I've made the mistake many times wearing a cotton t-shirt even in the middle of summer. You get to the top of the hill, you're feeling really hot, you've been sweating loads, and you sit down for 5-10 minutes and that sweat just cools straight down on your cotton t-shirt, it doesn't dry out and you just get freezing cold. And in the winter, that can end up being quite serious if you've got a cotton base layer on, just because the sweat on them just doesn't dry, especially in the winter, and you're just gonna be freezing cold no matter what layers you've got on top. So yeah, just avoid cotton wherever you can. That applies to socks as well, because once the cotton in your socks gets wet, especially in winter, your feet are going to get cold and you're going to get blisters. So yeah, avoid cotton at all costs. And you may have noticed now, I've talked about a few layers and they all have different purposes. And I think one of the things that can catch a few people out is there isn't one layer that's going to do it all. Having kind of multiple layers and having a really good layer system is the way to get through winter hiking, because you can take layers off, you can put them on. You know, if it's really cold, I could have my merino base layer on, I could have my thin fleece and a down jacket on top, and if I get too hot, take the down jacket off, take the fleece off. Having all those different choices of layers is the key to staying warm during winter hiking. And that brings on to our final upper layer, and that is your outer layer. So your outer layer is basically the layer that's going to protect you from the elements. So we're talking rain, wind, snow, mainly in the winter. However, we don't get much snow here in the Peak District anymore, unfortunately. So I've brought down 2 waterproofs with me today that I would usually wear for hiking. But this one I use is called the Rab Zenith or Zenith. It's a Gore-Tex waterproof. It's in their pack light range, so it packs down very, very small into the bottom of your bag and you don't really know it's there. It's relatively good for most winter hiking. However, because it's so thin, if the weather is really bad, which in the UK it can be with the rain, it's not going to be too effective for that. I would usually wear this sort of thing more so for summer hiking, spring, autumn, but I can still wear it a lot in the winter, be a lot more breathable than some other waterproofs, which is nicer for when it is a little bit milder. If the weather is going to be extremely cold, very wet, very windy, I'm going to be taking out my much thicker, harder wearing 4-season waterproof jacket. This is the Mountain Equipment Superlac. It's a Gore-Tex Pro jacket. Can get other membranes, so like North Face do their dry vent one. You know, you'll see ones with Pertex in. They're all different kind of names. If you're a bit unsure on them, go into your local outdoors shop and, you know, the staff there will be able to help you out with, you know, fitting you out with the right jacket for the right weather conditions. But yeah, this one is pretty bomb-proof when it comes to winter weather in the UK. It's going to keep the rain out, it's going to keep the wind off me, and it is extremely hard wearing. I've fallen over on some rocks with this, I've, you know, done scrambling with it in the winter, and it still looks pretty much brand new. All tape seams. I think it's got an 80 denier thickness of material. So yeah, it's absolutely fantastic for those really cold days in winter. Again, it's quite hard to have a waterproof jacket that is going to do it all. And I completely understand that a lot of people don't want to have 2 waterproof jackets. So if you are wanting a jacket and you're just wanting 1 waterproof jacket, my personal opinion is to go for something that is a bit more aimed at that kind of all-season, 4-season range. I can still wear this in the summer, I'm just going to be a little bit hot and sweaty, but it means that in the winter you're also covered for those really awful days. So if you're after kind of like your first proper waterproof, I would go for something a bit harder wearing, a bit thicker, a bit more kind of durable and made for winter, rather than something that's really lightweight and packable, because although these are amazing, in the winter they're not going to perform too well. So again, we've gone through kind of 4 layers there that can all be stripped off, taken off whenever you need. The other outer layer that I will quickly talk about is a soft shell. Soft shells are a little bit pointless in this country. They're really nice and comfortable. They're not usually very waterproof. This one here is not waterproof at all, really. I've sprayed it with some Nick Wax to give it a bit of repellency, but it's not going to keep you dry in a proper downpour, especially in winter. The main purpose of these is to keep the chill off you a little bit and block the wind out. They are mainly used for blocking wind, which in the UK, yes, we do get a lot of wind. However, your waterproof is going to be amazing at keeping the wind off as well. The only benefit of having something like this is it's not all crunchy and crispy like a waterproof. It's a bit more comfortable to wear and a little bit more breathable. So yeah, so a soft shell is always there as an option. I absolutely love this soft shell, just because it's so comfortable. It's an old school Patagonia one. My old manager gave it me, I think it's something like 20 years old, but it keeps the wind off, keeps the chill off me. It fits on top of all my other layers, so if it's a really cold, crisp day, but I just want something to keep the wind off, then this is really nice, but that will also do the same job at keeping the wind out. So that is a very quick tour of the layers that I would wear on my upper body. So you've got your base layers, moisture management, fantastic at keeping you kind of warm, keeping your body temperature regulated, wicking that sweat away from the body. Then you've got your mid layers, so you've got your thin fleeces, your thicker fleeces. Really good for giving you just that little bit of added insulation, bit of warmth. And then on top of that, you could have your down jacket or insulated jacket on. That's going to give you that real warmth, that real insulation for those really cold days. Down jackets, brilliant for when it's dry and cold. Synthetic, really good for when it's a bit wetter or you're doing something a bit more active. And then on top of that, for when it's hammering it down or snowing, you've got your waterproof jackets. I haven't really touched on safety that much, but a waterproof jacket, one of the most important pieces of like clothing that you can have in your rucksack. Purely because if you get wet and cold on a mountain, it's going to get serious very quickly, especially in the winter. If you're going to invest money, this is the thing you want to invest in, because you can get base layers, fleeces, you know, down jackets for, you know, you can get them relatively cheap and they're still going to do a very good job. But a waterproof jacket, a cheap waterproof, it's not going to cut it in the middle of winter. So that is the upper body. The lower body is very similar. I'm going to go through this very quickly because it's not much different to what you're on your upper body. Leggings, base layer leggings. I love these in the winter. These are just a synthetic pair. You can get merino ones as well. I wear synthetic ones a lot more than merino just because my legs don't get anywhere near as cold as my upper body. And then for the layer on top of that, I've got a soft shell trouser This is a Montane Terra Stretch, I think. It's a relatively thin one. It's really nice and stretchy. You can go for a much warmer and kind of more weather resistant trouser. But for winter hiking, any sort of proper hiking trouser is going to do the job if you've got a good base layer on. If it is going to be very cold, you know, sub-zero, you can go for a thicker trouser. And then lastly, you've got your outer shell. This is just a pair of waterproof trousers. This is a pair of Rab Pertex ones. And this is one of the areas of my kit that I really need to upgrade this winter. So I want to get a Gore-Tex pair that's a bit thicker, also which will help keep the water out a lot better. You have a base layer, a normal sort of soft shell trouser, and a waterproof trouser for when it's really wet. That's all I wear really for on my legs in the winter. Very similar to the upper body without having that kind of mid sort of fleece insulated layer. And lastly, I'm going to very quickly go through gloves and hats. I think most people know that gloves and hats in the winter, they're going to help keep you warm. You lose loads of heat through your hands and your head. I just wear a normal beanie. I've got a thin pair of gloves for when it's not very cold. I've got a waterproof pair of gloves. Fantastic for when it's, you know, those really wet days. These are sealskins ones. I really rate these. I've used these a lot in the winter and they're really good at keeping the wind off as well. And then I've got a really thick pair of Solomon gloves, which, yeah, if it's really cold, sub-zero, these are keeping my hands really warm. You can also go for a mitt as well, an insulated mitt. Just because mitts keep your hands a lot warmer, especially if you've got a thin glove underneath as well. And lastly, I thought I'd show you these just because I find these really useful because I do a lot of stuff with my camera. I can use my digits and they've also got a little mitt on top as well. I love these. These have got a Gore-Tex wind blocker in them as well, so they're a really cool little glove. So that's hats and gloves. And then I thought I'd just do socks very quickly as well. I always wear a liner sock. That's just my personal preference because I get blisters quite easily. It's an extra layer of friction between you and your outer sock and the shoe. So I always wear liner socks and they help keep your feet a little bit warmer as well. And then you can go for a merino wool sock, you can go for a synthetic sock or a mix, depending on what the weather's like. Merino is going to keep your feet a lot warmer compared to synthetic. And then if the weather's really cold, really wet, I wear my waterproof socks. These are really thick sealskin socks and they keep your feet really dry. I wore these loads last winter. So yeah, that is the majority of what I wear for winter hiking. I understand I've gone through that very quickly, haven't gone too in depth on it all. I just wanted to give you some basic all-round info on what I wear for winter hiking. Just a quick overview of some of the key points. Layers, layers, layers is the way to go. The more kind of layer options you have, the better equipped you're going to be for winter walking. Because one of the annoying things about winter walking is there isn't that one jacket, there isn't that one coat, one base layer that's going to do it all. So the more layers you have, although it's very annoying taking them on and off, when you do have that option of adding a layer, you know, taking a layer off, it just makes your days out in the winter so much more pleasurable because you're not going to be cold. There's no pressure to go out and spend heaps of money on those big brands that kind of do it the same as some of the smaller, lesser known brands. So yeah, I hope I haven't scared you off from doing any winter walking with the amount of kit. It's just nice to have that kind of range of different layers to add on. So yeah, that is pretty much everything. I've probably missed a load of stuff out there. I did have some little notes in front of me. But yeah, I hope that helped a little bit. I hope you all managed to get out and enjoy some winter hiking this year. I hope this has helped you a little bit. Please, 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 if you have any questions about anything, let me know in the comments and I'll try and answer. Let me know if you think I'm completely wrong as well, because I'd love to hear your opinions on what you wear for winter hiking. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this is mainly based for sort of Peak District, Lake District, UK hiking. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. A little bit different to my usual outdoor stuff. I'm actually going out on Kinder tomorrow. My dad's just got back from a hike now and said it was blowing an absolute hoolie. It's supposed to be a lot worse tomorrow. So yeah, I'm excited to do that and I'm filming it as well. So plenty more content coming your way soon. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the love and support on the channel. You know it means a lot to me and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.